Houston, Texas. Early morning, 1992. A quiet neighborhood becomes a crime scene.
Two brothers, Juan and Hector Garza, were found shot to death inside their home.
There were no witnesses, no struggle, only the silence of a suburban morning.
Investigators arrived to find a scene that offered more questions than physical answers.
The investigation began with a search for anyone who knew the victims. Police began knocking on doors, looking for a lead in the Garza murders.
They soon found a name: Genovevo Salinas, a man who had visited the house.
Salinas agreed to talk. He was not a suspect, and he was not arrested.
He voluntarily handed over his shotgun for ballistics testing to prove his innocence. He walked into the station on his own. He was free to leave.
The interview lasted nearly an hour. Salinas answered every question the officers asked.
He was cooperative. He was calm. He was exercising his civic duty.
Then, the tone of the room changed. The questions became specific.
One question would change the course of American constitutional law forever.
Juan and Hector Garza were more than just names in a police file.
They left behind a family and a community shattered by sudden, senseless violence.
The loss was heavy. The neighborhood demanded answers and a sense of justice. For the Garza family, the legal technicalities mattered less than the truth.
A community's safety was at stake. A killer was still at large.
Every lead was scrutinized. Every acquaintance of the brothers was a person of interest. The human cost of the crime fueled the urgency of the Houston detectives.
The house remained a frozen monument to the morning the brothers died.
Grief turned into a patient wait for the legal system to respond.
Justice in Texas is often a long, slow-moving process. The community looked to the police to find the missing piece of the puzzle. Fear lingered in the shadows of the Garza's neighborhood for months. The innocence of the suburban block had been permanently stripped away. Inside this house, a silent killer had left behind a legacy of legal debate.
Houston PD focused on Salinas. He was the last known visitor to the home.
The timeline was established. The connection was purely circumstantial but highly significant.
They called Salinas. He agreed to meet them at the station immediately.
Salinas believed that cooperation was the best way to clear his name.
The environment was formal, but not yet adversarial. He was a guest.
He sat for an hour, discussing his relationship with the Garza brothers.
They asked about his whereabouts. They asked about his own 12-gauge shotgun.
Every word was being recorded for the official police file.
Would your shotgun match the shells found at the Garza home?
Salinas did not answer. He looked down, He became perfectly still. For nearly a minute, the room was filled with an oppressive silence.
We know you were there. Start talking, son. It'll be a lot easier on you.
To the detectives, this silence was not a right. It was a reaction. That moment of silence would become the state's most powerful weapon.
Ballistics evidence is the backbone of any murder investigation.
They compared the casings from the scene to the gun Salinas provided. The match was not perfect, but it was enough to build a case.
The mechanics of the weapon were scrutinized for any sign of a match.
The evidence was compiled into a thick manila folder labeled Salinas.
Every surface Salinas touched was analyzed for a definitive forensic link.
But the physical evidence was only half of the story.
Prosecutors focused on the transcript of the voluntary interview. This line would be the center of the prosecution's legal strategy.
They framed the silence as an admission of guilt by conduct.
The science of the case was complicated, but the silence was simple.
Investigators looked for any reason to justify an arrest after months of waiting. Finally, the state felt they had enough to move forward.
The investigation was over. The legal battle was about to begin.
The trial of Genovevo Salinas opened in a Texas state court.
But the prosecution told the jury to look at his reaction.
An innocent man would have denied it.
The jury was tasked with deciding if silence equals a guilty conscience. The Fifth Amendment states that no person shall be compelled to be a witness against himself.
The defense fought to keep the evidence of the silence out of the trial.
The judge ruled in favor of the state. The jury would hear about the silence.
Under Texas law at the time, the ruling was standard procedure.
Salinas was convicted of murder. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. His journey through the justice system had only just begun. An appeal was filed. The legal community began to take notice. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals upheld the conviction. The final hope for Salinas lay in Washington, D.C.
The Salinas case exposed a massive loophole in the American Bill of Rights. Most citizens believe their right to stay silent is automatic.
The courts, however, were developing a much stricter interpretation. If you don't say you are staying silent, can your silence be used against you? This is the Miranda trap, a right you must speak to use. The law was struggling to keep pace with the reality of police interactions. The systemic flaw was simple. The right to silence was becoming a technicality. The burden was being shifted from the state to the individual. To protect your rights, you now had to be a legal expert in the moment. The system was prepared to penalize those who simply stayed quiet. In 2013, the Supreme Court finally heard the arguments. The case would define the limits of the Fifth Amendment for a generation. Justice Alito wrote the plurality opinion that stunned legal scholars.
The court ruled that the Fifth Amendment is not self-executing.
21 years had passed since the murders in Houston. Salinas remained in prison, his conviction solidified by the High Court's ruling. The decision became the law of the land in every state.
It is now taught as a warning to every future lawyer.
The famous warning now carries a silent, dangerous caveat.
For Salinas, the appeals were over. The system had spoken. Life in Houston continued, but the legal landscape had shifted. The ruling changed how every police officer in America conducts an interview.
They are now trained to watch for the silence, not just the speech.
The Garza brothers were long gone, their names tied to a legal precedent. Law, like nature, finds a way to fill the gaps we leave behind. Salinas's 20-year sentence became a landmark in constitutional history. He remains a symbol of the requirement to speak. The men who made the initial ruling have long since retired.
Today, Salinas v. Texas is the final word on pre-arrest silence.
It is cited in thousands of cases every single year.
It is a reminder that the law is not what we think it is.
It is what the courts say it is, in a specific, documented moment. The Fifth Amendment remains, but its application has narrowed. The protection is only as strong as your ability to claim it. Another morning in Houston. Another potential crime scene.
Silence is no longer a safe harbor for the accused.
In this room, your quietness is now considered evidence. The key to your freedom may now be your own voice. We live in a system that requires us to speak to be heard. One moment in 1992 ripples through the lives of millions today.
When silence speaks, the law listens. The right to remain silent. If you want it, you have to say it.